It's Saturday afternoon, 1984, or maybe it's 1991. In here, the year really doesn't matter, because the second you step through those heavy carpeted walls, time ceases to exist. There are no clocks in this kingdom, no windows to the outside world, just the soft glow. You're standing just outside the mall entrance, right next to the Orange Julius or the KB Toys. You can hear the arcade before you see it. It's a muffled digital roar, a symphony of screams and laser blasts, and music that sounds like 1,000 robots having a domestic dispute. You push through the entrance, and the transition is instant. The bright, sterile lights of the mall vanish, replaced by a strobing neon purgatory. It's dark, darker than it has any right to be, lit only by the flickering, hypnotic pulse of 100 CRT monitors, each one fighting for a piece of your soul. The air in here is different. The sharp tang of ozone from rows of overheating circuit boards, the salty, buttery smell of the soft pretzel you grabbed 10 minutes ago at the food court, and that faint, metallic smell of sweaty palms gripping hard plastic joysticks. Your eyes take a moment to adjust to the gloom. You see the attract modes, those neon-soaked title screens designed to seduce you from across the room. You see the silhouettes of teenagers hunched over glowing pedestals, their faces illuminated in electric blues and jagged reds. You reach into your pocket, and you jingle the only currency that carries any weight in this realm, a heavy handful of silver quarters, or maybe that brass token with the Aladdin's Castle logo stamped into it. As you walk deeper into the rows of cabinets, the transformation happens. You aren't just a kid with a paper route anymore. You're a starfighter pilot in a dogfight over the Death Star. You're a world-class martial artist on the streets of Tokyo. You're the last line of defense against an 8-bit alien invasion. In here, the rules of the real world don't apply. In here, you aren't invisible. You're the high score. Welcome to the Neon Church. Welcome to the arcade. I'm Moonlight Peterson, and this is Bite-Sized Nostalgia. Today we're dropping a quarter into the machine and traveling back to a time when gaming wasn't a solitary act. It wasn't something you did tucked away in your bedroom with a headset on, whispered conversations happening over a fiber optic cable. Back then, gaming was a contact sport. It was a public performance held under the flickering neon glow of your local arcade. If you were good, and I mean really good, you didn't just play the game. You commanded a crowd. You felt the breath of 20 strangers on the back of your neck as you reached level 255. You weren't just pressing buttons. You were putting on a show. Before the internet ever dreamed of connecting us, the arcade was our social network. It was our town square, our clubhouse, and our coliseum all rolled into one. It was the only place on Earth where you could see impossible graphics, colors, and animations that your home console couldn't even dream about replicating. It was the only place you could hear robotic voices, gravelly commands that sounded like they were being beamed in from the year 2099. We didn't have followers or likes back then. We had something much more visceral. We had the high score table. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the secret language of the arcade. We're talking about the rigid hierarchy of the high score, the unwritten law of the quarter on the glass, and the heartbreaking moment when your last life flickers away and the screen asks you, continue? We're exploring why the local arcade was the most beautiful, the loudest, and if your parents are to be believed, the most expensive place to grow up. So grab your change, the machine is idling, and the next game is yours. Let's talk about the buy-in. Before you could even think about a high score, you had to secure your ammunition. Whether your local spot took straight, honest-to-God quarters, or those custom brass tokens with the arcade's logo stamped on them, maybe a castle or a stylized lightning bolt. The weight of that metal in your pocket, it felt like power. It was a physical manifestation of your potential for the next 3 hours. But there was a gatekeeper you had to pass first, the change machine. Remember that thing? It was a giant beige industrial strength box that looked less like an appliance and more like a high security safe. You'd stand before it, clutching a wrinkled $5 bill that you'd spent the past 5 minutes smoothing out against your jeans, just so the machine would accept it. You'd carefully feed the bill into the slot, and for a second there was that agonizing silence as the red wait light flickered. Then the machine would respond. It was a violent, musical, mechanical symphony, a rapid fire, thwack, 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 as a waterfall of cold silver or brass hit that stainless steel tray below. That sound wasn't just a noise. It was the starting gun. It was the official go signal for the weekend. You'd scoop up that heavy pile of metal into your hands, feeling the chill of the coins against your skin, and you'd drop them into your pocket. That rhythmic clink with every step you took. That was the heartbeat of the afternoon. But having a pocket full of tokens or quarters wasn't enough. You didn't just run to the first machine you saw. You had to have the lean. You'd walk the rows of cabinets with a slow, deliberate strut. Your eyes were constantly scanning the attract modes, looking for the game that spoke to you that day. Maybe it was the twitchy, high-speed chaos of Defender. Maybe it was the rhythmic, insectoid nightmare of Centipede, or the cold, deep space precision of Galaga. You'd look for the machine that didn't have a crowd if you wanted to practice in secret, or if you were feeling brave and you felt like a god of the joystick that day, you'd look for the one that did have a crowd. You'd walk up to the edge of the circle, wait for a lull in the action, and prepare to make your move. Because in this room, money was your vote, and you were about to cast it. There was a universal language spoken in arcades from the boardwalks of New Jersey to the malls of California, and it didn't require a single spoken word. It was a silent, unbreakable law known as the quarter on the glass. Imagine the scene. You walk up to a machine. Maybe a cabinet of Street Fighter II where a crowd has already formed, or a dusty Donkey Kong. Someone is already mid-game, their hands blurred in a frantic dance across the buttons. In the real world, you might ask how long they'd be. You might wait in a polite, single-file line, but not here. In the neon church, you simply reached into your pocket, took your quarter, and placed it firmly, with intent, on the bottom edge of the monitor glass. That quarter was more than just 25 cents. It was a legal contract. It was a flag planted in the sand. It said, "I have next, I'm watching you, and you better hope you lose soon." The moment that coin hit the glass, the atmosphere changed. It created this incredible, simmering tension. You weren't just a spectator anymore. You were the shadow. You'd stand there, shoulder to shoulder with a stranger, staring at the screen with predatory focus. You'd study their patterns. You'd watch how they handled the joystick. Were they a button masher or a tactician? You'd look for their weaknesses, waiting for that one fatal mistake that would send them back to the game over screen. And the player? They could feel you. They knew your quarter was sitting there like a ticking clock, literally counting down the seconds of their digital life. The arcade was the only place where spectating was just as important as the gameplay itself. It was a theater where the actors were constantly changing, and the audience was always waiting for their turn to take the stage. To be successful in this arena, you needed more than just fast reflexes. You needed nerves of steel and ice in your veins. You had to perform while a stranger was breathing down your neck, judging every move and waiting for your inevitable failure. And God help you if you tried to skip the line. To move someone else's quarter was the ultimate arcade sin. It was an invitation to a confrontation that usually ended with a mall security guard being involved. Because on the glass, the order was sacred. You waited your turn. You watched the master at work, and you prepared yourself. Because once that game over screen started its 10-second countdown, the stage was finally yours. we have to talk about the machines themselves. These weren't just computers tucked into plywood boxes. They were pieces of industrial art. They were monuments of wood, glass, and glowing gas. Each one was designed with one specific goal: to scream louder than the machine next to it and grab you by the collar as you walk by. Think about the Dragon's Lair cabinet. In a sea of blocky 8-bit pixels, suddenly, here was a literal Disney-style movie that you could actually control. It was a revolution. But beauty came at a price. Usually it cost 50 cents, 2 quarters, a king's ransom in 1983. You'd drop your money, the laser disc would spin up with a low hum, and you'd usually find yourself staring at a game over screen in 20 seconds because you mistimed a sword swing. But it didn't matter. The line to just watch someone else play was 10 people deep. We weren't just playing, we were witnessing the future. Then you had the environmental cabinets, the ones that didn't just stand there but invited you inside. Think about the Star Wars cockpit. You'd climb into that molded plastic seat, the dark walls of the cabinet would wrap around your peripheral vision, and the outside world of the mall simply disappeared. Suddenly, you were in a trench run on the Death Star. Those bright, flickering vector graphics, simple lines of pure light, felt like they were piercing your soul. The yoke controller in your hands had a weight to it, a resistance that made every TIE fighter blast feel real. Or think about Gauntlet. It was the first true social multiplayer experience. 4 joysticks, 4 coin slots, and 4 total strangers screaming at each other, "Don't shoot the food!" It was a chaotic lesson in teamwork and betrayal, all fueled by the relentless ticking down of your health bar. And of course, we have to talk about the gods of the arcade. Every local spot had one. You know the guy, usually a little bit older, wearing a faded denim jacket, sporting a luscious, perfectly feathered mullet that caught the neon light just right. This was a guy who could play Pac-Man or Galaga for 4 hours on a single solitary quarter. While the rest of us were burning through our allowance in 10 minutes, he was in a trance. A crowd would gather in silent, reverent awe, watching him navigate the split screen or the challenge stages with the precision of a brain surgeon. He didn't need an Instagram following or a blue check mark. He had the only validation that mattered, the top spot on the high scoreboard. In 1985, the initials AAA or Joe, etched in glowing letters at the top of the screen, made you more famous in your zip code than the mayor. You weren't just a person, you were a legend in 8-bit stone. Like we've talked about in previous episodes, the arcade was the ultimate long-leash destination. It was the furthest point in the kitchen table that a kid in 1980-something could travel without a passport. Think about the ritual. Your parents would pull the station wagon up to the mall curb, drop you off with $10, which felt like a fortune, and a single sacred instruction. Be back at the fountain by 5. That was it. No GPS, no cell phones, no way to reach you. For those 4 hours, you weren't a student, you weren't a son or a daughter. You were an explorer in a neon-lit, slightly dangerous, and a totally unmonitored world. The arcade was dark, loud, an electric purgatory where you were in charge. It was the first place many of us practiced a social contract without a teacher standing over our shoulder. This was where you learned the hard lessons. You learned how to handle a win without being a jerk. And more importantly, how to handle a loss when your last quarter disappeared into a machine that just cheated you. It was where you learned the art of the standoff, how to handle the local bully who tried to skip your quarter on the glass. There were no principal's offices in the arcade. There was just a code of the joystick, and you had to navigate it with your own wits. It was a rite of passage for the paper route hustle. This is where the hard-earned delivery money went. It's where the crisp $5 bill from your grandma's birthday card was converted into 3 hours of pure, concentrated adrenaline. We loved it because it was a place that felt like it belonged to us. It was the polar opposite of the quiet, beige, don't touch that world of school and chores. It was a world of blacklight posters, industrial carpet, and the smell of hot electronics. It was our first taste of true independence, brought 25 cents at a time. So, what happened to the neon cathedrals? The death of the arcade didn't happen with a sudden power-off switch. It was a slow, agonizing retreat. It started in the late 80s and early 90s when the home consoles, the NES, the Sega Genesis, and eventually the powerhouse that was the original PlayStation, started to do something unthinkable. They started to catch up. For years, the arcade held the high ground. If you wanted the good graphics, you had to go to the mall. But slowly, that gap began to close. Suddenly, the impossible worlds we used to pay 25 cents to visit were sitting right there in our living rooms. You didn't have to wait in line, didn't have to put your quarter on the glass. If you died, you didn't reach for your pocket, you just reached for the reset button. The arcades tried to fight back. They entered a desperate technological arms race. They gave us gimmick cabinets, massive hydraulic-powered racing seats that shook your teeth, 50-inch projection screens that made your eyes water, and plastic light guns that felt like they weighed 10 pounds. They tried to give us experience that a Super Nintendo simply couldn't replicate. But the siren call of the couch was too loud. The convenience of a bag of Doritos, a cold can of Jolt Cola, and the ability to play until 3 a.m. without a security guard kicking you out. It was a gravity we couldn't escape. We traded the theater of the arcade for the comfort of the bedroom. By the late 1990s, the neon started to flicker. It was a heartbreaking sight to walk through the mall and see the local tilt or Aladdin's castle behind a "coming soon" sign. One by one, the coliseums became cellular phone stores or Starbucks. The industrial strength, neon patterned carpet was ripped up. The ozone smell of hot circuit boards vanished, replaced by the scent of roasted coffee beans. The gods of the arcade, the guys with the denim jackets and the high score legends, they packed up their joysticks and went home to play online. We made a trade. We didn't fully understand it at the time. We traded the physical stranger standing next to us, the shared breath, the high fives, the quarter on the glass, for a disembodied voice in a headset. We gained convenience, but we lost community. The game over screen wasn't just for our characters anymore. It was for the era itself. We miss the arcade because we miss the intensity. In the modern world, we've perfected the art of the do-over. But in the neon world, we had skin in the game. Think about that specific, agonizing moment. You're down to your very last quarter. Your pockets are empty. You're on the final level. Or maybe you're staring down a boss that's been taking your lunch money for 3 straight weeks. Your heart isn't beating. It's thumping against your ribs like it's trying to escape. Your hands are shaking. Your palms are slick against the plastic of the joystick. And your eyes are stinging from the CRT flicker. Every single move mattered. There was no cloud save to catch you if you fell. It was just you, the machine, and the moment. And the best part, you weren't alone. You could feel the collective energy of the crowd behind you. They weren't just watching. They were cheering your every move, gasping when you narrowly dodged a missile, and roaring when you finally landed the finishing blow. That was a shared human experience that a high-speed fiber optic connection just can't replicate. Today, the games are beautiful. They're cinematic masterpieces with infinite lives and auto-save checkpoints every 30 seconds. They're perfect. But they're also a little bit sterile. They don't have the soul of a cabinet that's been played 1,000,000 times by 10,000 different kids. They don't have the dents in the wood, the cigarette burns on the plastic, or the unmistakable smell of a Friday night in 1988. Maybe that's why barcades are exploding in popularity now. It's not just about the beer or the retro kitsch. It's because we're all trying to find that frequency again. We're looking for a dark room, a loud noise, and a reason to stand shoulder to shoulder with a stranger. We're looking for a chance to put our quarter on the glass. Look at the world and say, I'm still here. I've still got the patterns memorized. I've got next. So I have to ask, what was your money pit? What was that one specific cabinet that seemed to have a personal vendetta against your allowance? The one game that took every cent you had and still sent you home with nothing but a continue screen? For me, it was Double Dragon. I spent a literal summer trying to rescue Marion, and to this day, I'm still convinced that game was rigged. Those elbows, those falling barrels, they weren't just programmed. They were personal. But I want to hear your war stories. Find me on social media at Bite-Sized Nostalgia. Tell me about the high score you held for a week, or the time you finally beat the god of the joystick in your local mall. And if you want to keep that 1980-something energy alive between episodes, grab my book, So You Think You Know the 80s, on Amazon. It's the ultimate field guide to the decade we'll never truly leave behind. I'm Moonlight Peterson, and I'll see you in the next one. Because for us, it was never just a game, it was a frequency.